Hey guys, it is week 4 of Super Rugby AU, and this week I am covering the Waratahs versus the Rebels and the Force versus the Brumbies. If you want to scroll past or go to your specific team, just scroll here at the bottom or check in the description below for the timestamps. So in the standings, you'll see the Reds are in the top spot with the Brumbies just behind them. And the Waratahs just under them. So for those two teams, they really want to win to get back to the top spot or get a top spot for the first time in a long time, the Waratahs. And the Rebels and the Force, they have something to play for because they just need to stay in it. If they lose again, they'll probably be out of it for the rest of the season. The first game this weekend sees the Waratahs playing the Rebels in the Sydney Cricket Ground in clear sky conditions, 14 degrees Celsius, so not that bad for them. The Waratahs suffered a agonizing defeat in the last minute to the Brumbies last weekend and lost by 1 point. So they are clearly much improved to the team that they were earlier this season. This young side is really stepping up and it looks like things are coming right for them at this moment. The Rebels, they have been through a loss and a draw and a bye weekend, so they need to prep for this one to win it, because otherwise they'll be 4 weekends down without a win. History is clearly in the side of the Waratahs. They have won 8 of the last 10 games these two teams have played, though the Rebels beat the Waratahs 24-10 earlier this year in February. The matchup of this game will probably be Rebels' old boy Maddox versus his old master Dane Haylett-Petty. Maddox has been in better form in this last 2 games, and the Waratahs really have improved since he's been in form and taken over from Beale at fullback. Dane Haylett-Petty, he's probably just very important for his captaincy role, not as great form as Maddox so far. The number 10 veteran Tamua will want to go head to head versus Harrison, the new kid on the block. Harrison, who just doesn't miss any kicks, except for last weekend he missed a couple, but he's very solid off the tee. He really gets his conversions almost every time. Tamua is probably the one number 10 in Australia that hasn't really made an impression on this AU season so far. Meeks versus Hunt is going to be a tough one as well. They are very similar players that like to run at defenses. They like to step as well. They have a great pass on them as well. The one thing Hunt has in his advantage is his kicking game. We saw it 2 times last weekend, or was it the weekend before, with his 50-22 meter kicks. Those rules for this Aussie tournament, he really uses that kicks well for his side, and they are really going well with it. Especially their lineouts that are just ticking over from it. The other kickers for the Rebels, Hodge, he's back at number 13 over Magnay, who was pretty physical last time he played. I thought the Rebels played a little bit better with him at number 13 instead of Hodge, because Hodge brings something else when he comes off of the bench. Yes, he did score at the end when he came off the bench, but it's because he's a game-changing player. Magnay, he's just very physical and likes carrying the ball forward and just plays differently than Hodge. Out wide, there are no changes so far, with these 4 wingers yet to really stamp their name on this competition. Up front, there's a couple of changes for the Rebels. First up front, Orr joins Fau Masili, who's been in great form. He looks like the next big thing in Australia, quite literally. Damn, this guy can really carry the ball forward. Up against the Waratahs front row that really improved after the inclusion of Tom Robertson. When he came in, the scrum really improved since he came in back for their side. The second row for the Waratahs look to have the edge in this one, with Simmons and Hannigan, who's been in good form, while the Rebels have probably been okay. And now there's a change in there as well, so I think the Waratahs might have the edge in the second row battle in this one. Loose forward battle is definitely a tough one to call. Last time out, Hooper really was present all over the park, especially on the breakdown. It looks like he's getting it right. Not completely yet, but it looks like he's trying to get it right for the new rules or the new interpretation of the laws, while Hardwick is doing exactly the same thing for the Rebels. Wells versus Dempsey, I think could be a brutal battle for them on this park, and I think it's going to be a big one to see. On the benches, both teams lack a bit of star power or game-changing power. The Waratahs, they probably have Staniforth, Godwin, and Nawakonitawase to do that for their teams, while the Rebels will go on Gibbon and Lomani to do that. But other than that, not that much. This one is a tough one to call. I don't expect it to be a live wire affair like the Reds and Force game last weekend. That was a good game. But some moments of brilliance will win this game for one of the teams, because there is guys in this game that can just switch a gear and just score great tries. The Waratahs are looking like they are coming back to form that we know them for, while the Rebels are one of those teams that just are always hanging in there, so they're close enough to the other sides. I think the Waratahs will win by 8 points. Whoever says Australian rugby is not entertaining did not watch the Force versus Reds last weekend. That makes us remember what they used to do in Super Rugby. The Force are playing against the Brumbies this weekend, and last weekend the game against the Reds was an epic one. The Brumbies, they are only a maul team, a lot of people would tell you, but that's not true. They also have a very good kicking game. They always are in the correct part of the field, especially with this 50-22 rule now. They can really just punish you if you don't field those kicks correctly. And they also have their fair share of good runners, and they just have great players in their team, but they do it in the correct parts of the field. That is tournament winning teams. But I can promise you, if they do need an easy try, you can bet some easy pennies on a maul try for Folau Fahinga. The Western Force, they have their first home game of the tournament, though it is in Sydney, unfortunately not in Perth. It is clear skies for them, 14 degrees Celsius as well so far, otherwise I'll change it up there. History is not really relevant so far, but it is clearly in the favour of the Brumbies. As you can see, both teams made a couple of changes. The Force's regular captain, Pryor, is out on injury, so in steps the new recruit Frisbee, who is a Wallaby. He's 27-year-old, and, well, he's an ex-Reds player as well. That's a very general thing in the Force team. There's a lot of ex-Reds players in there. He joins Lance in the 9-10 combo. Lance impressed with his attacking lines last week. I like how he plays a very flat line and a flat ball to the other players out wide. That kind of draws the defense out to try and get a intercept. And when you do that, you make gaps in the line. If that guy doesn't intercept, guys like Brachi and those guys can really punish them. Those balls either land in a big guy's hands like Taefu, who's at number 12, who just loves carrying it forward. He will probably target Simone. And Brachi, who, if it lands in his hands, he'll try and get a gap between Simone and Kuridrani. The Brumbies had to bring in Quinzel at number 10. Unfortunately, Lolosio, the rising star of Australian rugby, has been injured, and he's now out for 8 weeks. I wasn't very happy when he was injured, because it's a very sad moment for a young guy's career. The Brumbies also bring in Carter at number 14, ahead of Muriad, who's been really impressive so far this AU season. He's just all over the park, a very high worker all over the park. Lacey will have to front up against Carter for barnstorming runs, I can promise you that, while Ralston for the Western Force will want to score a couple of tries once again. Up front, there are no changes for the Force, only Thrush, who is the captain for the team this weekend, who, by the way, is still in very good form all over the park, and he is smart enough not to fight with a halfback, so that's Thrush for you. Then Scott Seo in the front row. He had a tough time last weekend coming off the bench pretty early for Slipper, who got a concussion early in the game, and they struggled a bit at the scrum, so hopefully he improved a bit from that. I'm sure he did. He's also a Wallaby, so they're going to have to front up against the Western Force scrum, who's also been pretty strong. Nick Frost comes in at the second row and gets his first start for the team, and a facet of play that is pretty crucial for the Brumbies, because, let's face it, they score a lot of tries from it. And in steps Thrush again, because he's the guy that loves stealing opposition line-out balls, so the Brumbies might struggle this weekend as well. All 6 of the loose forwards have been impressive so far this season. When Valentini is the most quiet guy on the park, that's saying something. These guys have been playing well. Stowers was in my dream team last weekend if you want to check that out. And you can see, I can just see it happening. Stander versus Samu. There's just going to be blood spilled somewhere on the park. On the benches in red, you'll see a pretty recognizable face for the Western Force. Kahui is included for the Western Force, and he's going to look to break guys in half again when he comes onto the park. This guy can tackle guys, if you did not know that. With the other centre pairing, or his partner also on the bench, Godwin, he hasn't really found his feet yet. Both of these guys are going to have to find their feet hopefully pretty quickly, because if they don't find their feet in the centre of the park, the Brumbies might punish them at the end of the game. The Brumbies, they have Slipper on the bench for a added scrum power at the end. Nick White is not back for the Brumbies yet. He did start training with them a little bit earlier than expected, though Fines at number 21 was very good for the Brumbies, scoring that last try at the end of the game to win it for them against the Waratahs. Muriad at number 23 would be itching to get onto the park and just have his work rate up again. If the game was in Perth, I would probably have said the Western Force was favourites, but the Brumbies always are favourites when playing against any other Australian team. The Force definitely have a surprise victory in them somewhere in this competition. Could it be this week? Who knows? But the safe bet would probably be the Brumbies to win by 11 points. Guys, that's it for the Australian games. If you want to check out any of the other games, the New Zealand games, it will be here linked next to me. Otherwise, I'll check you for the next one. And then please subscribe if you want to. Cheers.